Mariam, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hello, my name is Mariam Al-Zaabi. I'm a WiSER pioneer and an analyst in Generation International Assets at Tagha. WiSER stands for Women in Sustainability, Environment and Renewable Energy. Founded by Masdar, WiSER is an impact-focused platform dedicated to promoting gender equality and inspiring women to play an active role in addressing global sustainability challenges. WiSER aligns with the UAE government's Vision 2021 of enhancing gender equality in the workplace and the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. WiSER is also proud to have Abu Dhabi Global Market, the award-winning international financial center, as a principal partner. Today's session is held in collaboration with the Arab International Women's Forum and marks the first joint event between the AIWF and WiSER. Since the two organizations signed a strategic agreement earlier this month to advance their shared interest in championing sustainability empowerment for women and young people in the region and beyond. So today, on behalf of AIWF and the WiSER Network, I welcome you all to the fourth edition of the WiSER Wisdom Series, discussing women entrepreneurs in the green economy. I will hand you over now to today's moderator, Natalie Jones, Middle East Employment Law Leader at PwC Legal, who will introduce our distinguished speakers and direct the conversation. Thank you and enjoy the discussion.
Thank you, Mariam, and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the session. As Mariam mentioned, my name is Natalie Jones, and I lead PwC Legal's Middle East Employment Law practice. Before we dive into today's session, I would like to extend a warm welcome to everyone here, the panelists and everyone attending the session. It's wonderful to have you all here, and thanks for joining. It's also wonderful to have such a diverse group of attendees from all different parts of the world, and to have everyone coming together for this event to talk about such an important topic. As Mariam set out, the topic for today's session is Women Entrepreneurs in the Green Economy, and is put together by WiSER and the Arab International Women's Forum. Both entities support, obviously, women and strategic development in the region, and Mariam talked briefly to WiSER's goals in that area. I wanted to share a short introduction to the Arab International Women's Forum as well. And the forum has been a strategic partner for PwC for the past 10 years or so. The forum advances women's economic empowerment, leadership, and youth engagement globally. It works with its partners to help women and young leaders unlock their full potential and exercise their agency in the MENA region and beyond. It does this through education, economic empowerment, and leadership development, all very important things for us all to consider. Both WiSER and the International Forum are committed to supporting the next generation of women leaders in STEM and looking at sustainability. And against that backdrop, today we'll examine the emerging landscape for women-led entrepreneurship, social enterprise, innovation and advocacy in MENA and beyond, with a particular focus on the green economy. We also are looking at tailored solutions, targeted initiatives, and how to support women starting up and scaling up. And that's why we're talking about this particular topic today with the panel that we have for you all. That leads me nicely to talk about the panel that we've got. So joining me today to discuss women in the green economy and women entrepreneurship, particularly in the green economy, is an absolutely fantastic panel, super knowledgeable in their field, and I'm very excited to mention them all at this point. So as a starting point, we have Dr. Afef Haddad, who's the Country Programme Coordinator and Deputy to the Director for the Maghreb and Malta for the World Bank in the USA. She's also the leader of the Empower Her Maghreb initiative. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Afef. We have Malak Al-Shaibani, who is the External Relations Manager at Shell in Oman. Again, thank you also, Malak, nice to have you here. Thirdly, we have Dr. Enass Abo-Hamed, who is the co-founder and CEO of H2Go Power Limited in the UK. Welcome, nice to have you here. And finally, we have Dr. Salma Bougarrani, who is the co-founder and CEO of Green Watech in Morocco. So lots of different opinions and 4 panelists coming at everything from a different perspective. It will be great to hear from you all. I'm very excited to jump into the questions. Just one final point for today before we do go into the questions. Today's session, as you might have noticed, is being recorded, and the recording will be available after the session to watch. We encourage everyone everyone attending to ask questions, and if you can do so in the chat feature, we can have a look at the end and see how many questions we can answer. Obviously, we'll try to answer as many questions as possible, time permitting, so please do feel free to put your questions in there. Without further ado, very excited to get to the questions. The first starting point will be around opportunities for entrepreneurs and startups. So there are obviously lots of opportunities for women entrepreneurs all around us, and we're seeing that more and more, particularly in the green economy. And I think you have seen that up close with the Empower Her initiative, Dr. Afef. Would you mind taking a minute or two to tell us about the World Bank's work in this area, with a particular focus on your experiences establishing the Empower Her initiative?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, everyone. It's really a privilege to be here today. First of all, I would like to thank the Arab International Women's Forum and the Women in Sustainability, Environment and Energy Forum for inviting me to this important panel on women entrepreneurs in the green economy. I'm really pleased to be with all distinguished members of the panel, moderator and participants. Second, I'd like to emphasize that women economic empowerment and financial and social inclusion at the heart of the World Bank Group priorities. Our most recent strategy for gender equality, poverty reduction, and inclusive growth has featured 4 pillars. The first one is on improving human endowments in terms of improving health, education, and social protection conditions. The second one is removing constraints for more and better jobs, including removing barriers to entrepreneurship. The third is removing barriers to women's ownership and control of assets. And finally, the fourth is about enhancing women's voice and agency and engaging men and boys. So within these 4 pillars, the Empower Her program aims at building bridges between the youth as agents of change and rural women as agents of transformation of the society through technology. So let me talk to you about the Empower Her program for a little while. It is an innovative World Bank project that leverages the unbounded enthusiasm of youth and their technological skills to overcome the challenges that women in the green economy are facing and women in the rural areas are facing. So in this program, rural women in agriculture and artisans in Tunisia teamed up with young, unemployed graduate students in tech to design apps that will help women sell their traditional handmade crafts to the world, and on the other hand, have access to information, access to markets, and access to social protection and health coverage. So these 2 groups, the youth, the rural women, and the unemployed, the graduate tech, have an understandable sense of exclusion, as you might know, especially in the remote interior regions of Tunisia. They have high potential, but they lack opportunities. So the youth lack jobs, while the rural women artisans lack access to markets, finance, materials, social services, and information, as I said earlier. So the starting point for Empower Her was that Tunisia was among the largest users of social media in the MENA region, and that a growing number of students at the university, including women, were at a high percentage, and they were all studying STEM, and we thought we should capitalize on this human capital. So we used IT tools as the bridge to solve the constraints that rural women have faced for generations, and we organized hackathons across the whole country for the youth to compete, and the regional youth also in the interior regions to be included, and then they would compete at the national level for the final round. So in the end, we had 5 winning apps that have been selected. And in the past few years, the World Bank had accompanied their founders to build their skills to give them access to knowledge and to use its convening power to leverage financiers until they launched their startups. And these young women and men as well were transformed from graduate unemployed, especially graduate from tech, and to entrepreneurs in a very record time. Finally, I'd like to give you just one example of the startups, which is called Ahmini, meaning protect me in English, where we have the majority of women workers in Tunisia in the agriculture sector don't have access to social services or health care. And so this app, Ahmini, is an online service that enables women in agriculture to have access to enroll in social services easily by using a mobile phone without really having to leave their home. So it was the first time that many of these women would have access to the social services and healthcare that they and their families are entitled to. And with COVID, this startup had innovated even further and provided a connection with between these women and providers of food services because they were facing a shortage in terms of essential products and they were vulnerable at health risks. So they were connecting them with information on how to get food with dignity and at no cost, and how to get information on how to protect themselves and protect their households. Finally, I would like to have two messages to leave you with from this Empower Her example. The first one is that the interior region of Tunisia are rich in capital, human capital, and tech-savvy youth. So investing in these young people to support rural women through technology is investing in the society as a whole. Second message is that empowering women does not have to be limited to programs that are targeted to women. So we could also engage men and young boys to leverage their creativity so that they in turn empower women and create opportunities in the green economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Afef. And I think it's a very interesting point about the role men have to play in empowering women as well. But to touch on your point around, I guess, building bridges between different parts of different sectors and those who have different skills, I think it's a good point to explore further. And I think we can bring in Malak to talk a little bit around the role the private sector has to play in that. And what I would like to get to particularly is how the private sector can nurture entrepreneurial talent in sustainable energy and in green growth. Do you have any thoughts on that, Malak?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely one of the things that struck me with all of this is the fact that, you know, when the link to STEM, that the MENA region actually has 57% more female graduates in STEM, which is actually better than the US and the EU combined. So I don't think we have an issue with a lack of women with skills. Now, where the private sector comes in is in 2 or 3 ways that the private sector can play a role. One is it's in contracting strategy, where basically you start encouraging a certain percentage for women-owned women businesses. And the second one is probably in capacity building, and probably I'll just mention a third one, which is something that we're doing in Shell, which is basically encouraging green enterprises. For instance, we have a program that's called Solar into Schools, which basically consists of creating the complete value chain, where we've actually created 6 small and medium enterprises that basically fit out schools with solar panels and cleaner energy. What that has done is it's also linked to our STEM program, which runs in schools. It's called NX Explorer, and I'd like to share that 2 years in a row, the top teams were actually all female, which basically tells you that the potential is there. So what we have done, we've linked most of our social investment programs into cleaner energy, cleaner enterprises. We have an enterprise development program that's going to look at the circular economy and also basically clean energy. So going back to the solar into schools, we are fitting 22 schools with solar panels. In the process, we've created 100 jobs, created entirely new small and medium enterprises in this field who are not just doing work for Shell right now, they have opportunities to do elsewhere. And these solar panels are fitted all around schools that cater both to girls and boys school, and actually 12,000 students are benefiting from cleaner energy as a result. So I think that's probably the third aspect in what kind of messaging does the corporate world or private companies do in order to encourage women-owned business, number one, and also to going towards a cleaner energy, cleaner future, and also a green economy.
Thank you for that insight, and it's good to see what the private sector is actually doing, and what you have achieved at Shell. It's really an interesting thing to hear about, and I think that your point around that the fact that there isn't a lack of skills, I would agree with that, and I think we can see that from this call, and probably a good time to bring in Dr. Salma and Dr. Enass about women with the skills to set up enterprises in the green economy. So let's go to Dr. Enass first. I'd like to hear about the enterprises that you've co-founded, and in particular about your personal leadership journey and experiences with entrepreneurship in the green economy. What have you struggled with? What have you found, particular focus areas, etc.?
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm very delighted to be here today and share my experience, and also learn from others' experience, which are very different and represents different opinions and angles. So, well, first is very important to clarify why are we talking about green economy and clean energy today. And the importance of that is that we actually want to look at the contribution that we have to make today in order to make our planet livable, and learn from the mistakes that earlier generations made and correct that. And how do we bring women into the picture to make things even better with like a female contribution, because they make a substantial representation of the people who live on the planet. So let's not forget, why are we having this conversation today? And that is why it's such a timely, important topic. It's very important to talk about the MENA region and the contribution of females in the MENA region, but also because it's like a planetary problem. It's a problem that we have worldwide. It's very important to also look at what's happening worldwide and where the cross-learning can happen, and when can we look for like an integrated approach and best practices exchanges. What can be done in the MENA region that could be exported in terms of approach and attitude, and what could be imported as well. So going back to myself, just a little bit about my experience. I'm a chemist by training. I did my PhD in Cambridge University, where actually the enterprise I started, H2Go Power, was a product of my PhD. I started the company during my PhD out of naivety, thinking that it's really cool to register a company. It's you don't really know at that stage what building a company is about as a student, and then 6-7 years ago, the climate conversation wasn't a hot topic. It was starting. You wouldn't have 17 years old teenagers saying, we got to do something very fast because my generation is about to start suffering very soon. So that was the time when we started the company, my colleagues and myself. This was in Cambridge 7 years ago. And this was about basically building a technology portfolio that looks at capturing renewable energy in the form of hydrogen and make that economical to introduce that to the industry and use in transportation and energy energy storage. What I've learned on the journey, that it takes 5 minutes to register a company, it takes 24 hours to get an approval for a company, and it takes years to properly build it. So many challenges along the way, especially when you are building an R&D heavy hardware company that looks at large-scale implementations, partnerships with dominant players in the market, where you have to introduce something completely new that not many people understand at the point of introduction. Sometimes you're early to the market, so you have to wait, and then there are a few setbacks. Fundraising, it really depends on the time that you fundraise, but fundraising for me personally haven't been very easy. It works at the end, but it does take many cycles of attempts until it works. Developing a technical product, running an engineering company isn't straightforward, in terms of you always have a technical challenge, you always need to solve it. It's very different when you are working with software only, for example, where your technical challenges are limited to software rather than, industry standards and cycles of approvals and insurances and things like that. All of that, there were many challenges around, well, first, learning what this is all about, and second, really taking the learning and implementing it to make sure that you keep your business going. So it has been, this is all talking about the challenges, but it has been an incredibly rewarding experience, in my opinion, first, because at some point I started to look around and to not find many women around me who actually were able to engage in a journey as hard as that. And at the same time, you get emails and messages from people you don't know who they are, telling you, please continue to do this, because I want my daughter to be like that, to believe that a company like that could be created and run by a woman. There aren't many, and we need this for, first, to set the example that this is possible, and secondly, because of the improvement that you could introduce as a scientist who turned into an entrepreneur. And that on its own is extremely rewarding. And at the same time, if you keep going at something that is challenging and you try again and again, and eventually it works, I think the reward in that you made something new, not many people attempted before, regardless of gender, but you've succeeded at the end, is incredibly rewarding. And especially if you're working in an industry that does need change and does need invention and does need innovation and does need contribution to an impact with an impactful approach. You feel like there is a lot for you to influence and change, and that is extremely rewarding.
That's a very positive messaging, and I think it sounds an extremely exciting time. I'll be interested, and thank you again for sharing that. I'll be interested to hear from Dr. Salma about those points. Dr. Salma, was your experience similar? So the same type of struggles, or what challenges did you face when you were setting up Green Watech?
Thank you, Natalie, and thank you for inviting me for this interesting panel. So I'm Salma Bougarrani. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Green Watech social enterprise based in Morocco. And yeah, 6 years ago, I was an independent consultant in the field of environments and sanitation. I worked during 2 years with the local rural population in Morocco. And at that moment, that I understand that access to water and sanitation is a real challenge in Morocco, and become also aware that this challenge requires new ways of thinking, new priorities, new standards, and new ways of doing things. I noticed that sanitation field in Morocco, especially in rural areas, was dominated by enterprise offering non-adequate technical and technological solutions regarding local socio-economical condition. Most of these enterprises were dominated by men, both at managerial level and operative level. Later on, I decided to run a doctoral research related to this big challenge. I joined several national and international research institutes in Morocco, in China, in Germany, and Ireland. And finally, we developed an innovative and efficient solution called soil-based filter, a patented innovation designed to be used to treat and reuse domestic wastewater in rural communities and decentralized sites in Morocco specifically, and all African and MENA region. So wastewater treatment is a big issue, and I'm talking about Morocco specifically. That Moroccan rural communities face more than 50% of Moroccan population living in rural areas suffer from sanitation issues. Groundwater and drinking water are polluted, causing disease like cholera, diarrhea, and causing children mortality. In 2018, I decided to found Green Watech for Challenge First. I'm a female scientist from Morocco who had a very modest upbringing and had to work very hard to enter. I entered entrepreneurial field because I believe that each one of us can make a difference, and I wanted to contribute positively to tackle this challenge facing my country. So our main mission is to implement affordable and efficient wastewater for rural population, to treat their wastewater, but also to reuse it in irrigation for food production. And this is a very important thing, since in Morocco we are under severe water stress, especially in the south of Morocco, and it could double by 2050. So the solution that we developed, called soil-based filter, is ecological, efficient, and economical solution, and it is a low-cost one. And through all that, we provide safe access to sanitation service, food production through reuse of treated wastewater, ensure well-being of local population, and so on. And based on my personal experience in Morocco, I think that despite Moroccan progress in working toward gender equity and the removal of many discriminatory practices and barriers for women, females are still significantly underrepresented in most fields, and especially in the entrepreneurial one. The Association of Women Entrepreneurs in Morocco estimate that the number of women entrepreneurs in Morocco does not exceed 10% of the number total entrepreneurs. And here, I would like to testify about my personal experience of gender inequality as a woman entrepreneur. For example, as a woman entrepreneur in civil engineering field, working with rural population, I faced two categories of obstacles. The first challenge were related to entrepreneurial environments. As a woman entrepreneur, I deal with the lack of credibility of the various partners, customers, suppliers, especially at the start of my project. I remember that for my first project, I had to manage a team of 7 men workers for the implementation of the wastewater treatment plant. At the beginning, it was so shocking for them to see a woman as a leader and manager on the building site. And then they have to follow her instructions and so on. It took me a long time to gain their trust and respect. And the second issue, the final one, it is related to several individual factors. I believe, honestly, that managing a business requires having conceptual, relational, and technical skills. And I recognize that it is really hard to reconcile my private and professional life without the support of my family. Yeah, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. It's very interesting. And it does sound like there's a lot of challenges coming from lots of different sides, no matter where we all are in this field or what we're trying to do. And thank you all for sharing your experiences. It's clear that to me, though, that there are lots of exciting projects happening and lots of initiatives going on to try and increase female participation in entrepreneurship, particularly in the green economy. And it's also clear that there have been challenges along the way that have obviously been overcome, I would hope. What I would be interested in hearing about now is around the main challenges as a general point for women starting up or women entrepreneurs starting up any type of green project in this region. I wonder whether we can go to you first, Dr. Afef, on that, just to see what your view is on the main challenges facing women in this space.
Thank you very much. I think a lot of the challenges have very well been highlighted by Enass. I would just want to reiterate one point made by Malak about the educational achievements of women in general. And that I fully agree with her that it's not a question of educational achievements. For example, if I give you the example of Morocco, in 2018, women accounted for 44% of students graduating with master's degrees, 63% in management and business, 50% in science and technology, and 39% in engineering. The issue is not in educational achievements, but the issue in the access to employment and female labor force participation. Inequalities in access to employment persist and have increased over the past decades in Morocco, for example. If I stay with this example, according to the statistics of the HCP in 2021, women accounted for 26% of the working population versus 35% in 2009. So it's declining. And we'll go back to the challenges later on. But I just wanted to highlight also the high inequalities in female participation in management positions. In 2019, only 12.8% of Moroccan businesses were female-led. I'm very glad to see Dr. Enass talking to us today. She's one of the leaders that has a female-led business. So let's talk about the challenges. Why is that happening? There is first the opportunity cost. So women face a higher opportunity cost to engage in the market, work due to disproportionate share of home responsibilities, you have to face it. Then there is the issue of imperfect information. Women are more likely to lack information about employers or investors' needs. In the case of startups we're discussing today, the expectations, the requirements, in part because of women's smaller professional networks. For example, VC and angel investors make investment decisions based on information provided by their networks. Then there is the question of capital market imperfections. Women often are not able to access capital due to limited collateral, lower or completely non-existent credit history. Then we talk about gender norms, and I think Dr. Enass alluded to it as well. Societal norms limit the types of jobs for women, limit their opportunities for startups. And even whether, even when they are really highly qualified, they can do the job, but there are norms that inhibit their potential. Then we come to the restrictive legal and regulatory frameworks. Women are experiencing a different process to register a business, open a bank account in several of MENA countries. And finally, I alluded to it earlier in my presentation of Empower Her, the access to markets. Social norms prevent women to travel alone or without a male relative in some countries, and they don't have critical access to market information. And women-owned businesses tend to be smaller, especially startups with fewer employees, lower average sales, and volume requirements is often a barrier to women entrepreneurs' participation, particularly in large, centralized and domestic and international markets. So all these challenges have led to the fact that many women, unfortunately, even highly qualified, even with high achievement at school, don't have access to startup opportunities. So let's talk about the opportunities now. The World Bank Group works on supporting the enabling factors to promote women entrepreneurship through various means: support to ecosystems, support to regulations. We have an annual report called Women, Business and the Law that perhaps many of you know about. It measures gender equality in the law. And this data set identifies the barriers to women's economic participation, and it encourages reforms at the country levels for discriminatory laws, and supports women entrepreneurs also in various aspects through training, through access to markets. We have the example of the Women Finance Initiative that supports a lot of small women-owned businesses in terms of training, in terms of pitching, in terms of looking for opportunities to scale up or opportunities to be more visible and to access to markets. We also work on projects that improve the conditions under which women can secure ownership of and control over productive assets and access to finance and insurance needed to acquire those assets. One example in the end is a financial inclusion and digital economy development policy operation in Morocco that we are supporting now, is supporting policies and actions towards improvement of data gathering on women and women-led companies, to enhance data collection, to better monitor the gaps in access and use of the formal financial system, improve the women data in credit information systems, and this is extremely important for startups, and improve women and women-led companies' access to finance. These are a little bit, this is a summary of the challenges and opportunities, but in the end, I would like to remind us of the inspiring words by Dr. Enass, is that you should, I think, startuppers, women startuppers should never give up and should persevere and continue to work hard. Of course, there are enabling factors, there are stumbling blocks, but in the end, with persistence, I think they can achieve great strides in reaching their goals and objectives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Afef. I think that's very valuable input, and I think that would lead us nicely to Dr. Enass again. I appreciated your views on the startups. What I would like to get some insight on at this point is, once we have a startup and we're trying to scale up, do the same challenges and opportunities continue through? So are you dealing with the same things over and over again throughout the life of the enterprise, or do you face different challenges once you're trying to scale up? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, certainly. So it's a really important question to bring up, and I think the answer really is in the title. When you scale up your business, you scale up your troubles and you scale up your challenges as well. You definitely have to deal with challenges at a bigger scale. The reason being is that you're multiplying your operations with scale. So any issue or any challenge that you have is going to be multiplied by the same factor. Having said that, a business becomes influential only at scale. So you do need to do that, but with the learning that you get from the starting up period, you learn how to deal with these challenges, and at the same time, with that learning, that qualifies you to manage your challenges better. So definitely, when you're at the starting up phase, for example, you could run your business because you're working at small scale of whatever development, for example. The finances at that scale are much smaller. So any mistake you do there is like easily, rapidly can be fixed with a quick advice. When you do that at a larger scale, is not as fast or as easily fixable. So what you learn from that is that you do need to put in place the right structure that allows you to scale up in a healthy way. So just to directly answer your question, and I could give you many other examples. You scale up everything. You scale up the successes and the challenges, but obviously the learning from the starting up period is really key to be actually able to successfully scale up.
Thank you for that. It's interesting to hear that and to get your take on it. I think now I would like to shift gears a little bit. So we've talked about how to get companies sorted and the challenges we're facing, how to start up and how to scale up. And I would like to go back to a point we touched on earlier and with you, Malak, around education. So you mentioned that there isn't an education issue or a learning issue. We have capable women, but I think there's still a focus widely on getting more girls and women into STEM education and looking at STEM subjects. But what I'm interested to know is how do we once we get them into STEM education, how do we effectively merge that with then getting them into entrepreneurship or building strategic partnerships, etc., so that we can develop capacity and confidence among these potentially young women?
I think, the question is as we've heard, the issue is not of talent. And if we look overall in the MENA region, if we were to achieve a gender gap with the way we're going, we're talking about 140 years to achieve that. And where we seem to fail is in political participation and economic. And economic, I look at it in two ways. One is basically getting people, more women, into careers in STEM. And also the other one is getting women to start businesses, which roughly women-led businesses, I think, are roughly around 4% overall in the MENA region. And I think we're very good at, because our systems very much are based on merit, and girls tend to do better in school than boys. So they tend to go, and it's quite prestigious, to enter into engineering, to enter into medicine. But then what happens after that? And these are the cultural norms that come where, in some communities, they prefer their daughters to work in segregated type of professions where they are teachers or they're academics. And the girls are themselves have sort of maybe some limiting behaviors, thinking it's going to be very difficult. But what I think needs to happen is an ecosystem that encourages women to pursue STEM careers, to look at role models. So I think you are looking really a 4 or 5 pronged sort of ecosystem that includes policies and process by government to encourage that, whether we're talking about the green economy or getting more women into employment, by having the right policies in place to create that enabling environment. Then you are talking also about the role of the communities, NGOs, the role of schools in basically highlighting the role models for women. One of the things that I feel is very, very powerful is creating these networks, both male and female. If we're talking about STEM education, it requires collaboration. It requires women to build networks across, to be able to work in a team. The best thing we have is technology, which basically allows you to do that in the safety of sometimes your environment. So these, I think, in my opinion, have been some of the limitations for women to be able to work in a team, whether it includes other women or men and women, to be able to come up with innovative ideas. So how do we get them there? And I think it's a complete ecosystem. And I think one of the most important things that I found working with female entrepreneurs that's really powerful is role models. Whether it's role models with women who have pursued STEM education inside companies and reached very high levels that we could basically use, so that, a little girl somewhere can see, hey, I can be that lead engineer in this project, okay? Or basically female entrepreneurs, role models such as we see today with Salma and Enass all over the MENA region, where basically we understand their struggles, what they had to go through. And, via that, like in most entrepreneurship ecosystems, you do have mentoring programs where basically people give a bit of their time to mentor other women and as they go through similar challenges. So, in a nutshell, I guess what I'm saying is you need a complete sort of aligned ecosystem where each player plays a part, because I think if our governments understand the MENA region, the fact that we are not tapping this talent, how much we're losing in billions of dollars in terms of our economies is just amazing. So it has to be pitched in that way, with creating an ecosystem that enables girls to get into STEM education, and those in STEM education to actually pursue careers in STEM and also start their own business. So I think somewhere in there is where we need to create that ecosystem that is very much aligned in what it is that we're trying to do. And the only way you can do that is to bring all these players on board and to say, hey, this is an issue of our future. This is an issue of creating employment for the youth. It's an issue of our economies becoming better, because if we're saying that we are, you got 57% actually much higher than the US and the UK. Germany only produces 35% female graduates in engineering. Why are we not using this untapped talent? Just a very, very quick example that I did. We had started a coding program for women. And in Oman, it was actually targeted for rural women to teach them how to code so they could do it in their comfort of their homes, and they could code for others. The 100% of the people who applied for the program were actually female graduates in engineering and technology who were unemployed, who actually wanted to do that, start their own business, because they felt due to mobility issues, they were really, really craving to get more information, listen to role models learn the coding skills, start their own business so they could have their own financial independence and basically be able, to have something to look forward to and to make a difference in their communities. I mean, what amazed me when I heard these two entrepreneurs, very successful ones talking about, is they went in there, the motivation is very different. They went in there to make a difference. And that, I think, is the real currency. They went in there to make a sustainable difference in their communities.
Yeah, and I think there's clearly lots of opportunities for that around us. And we have those individuals who are educated enough to do it, which is probably a great combination if we can bridge that gap that you're kind of talking about to get them right the way through. And I think that's a good time to get some feedback from the audience on this. So we've talked about what we see as the challenges and the stumbling blocks, if you will, around all of this. And what I'm interested to get to is, for those in the audience, what is stopping you from running with an idea, with a startup, or scaling up your business, doing more in the green space? And we've got a poll on the screen there with a number of options, and it could be at the bottom one there's something else entirely from the options that we've put, but we've put on there the main ones that we tend to hear about. So lack of support, lack of funding, lack of knowledge, etc. So if you can take a minute and pick one of the options, it would be good to collate all of those and see what the audience's view on this is. And we'll just leave it for a quick minute for it to get responses in, and then we can talk around those responses. I think there are responses starting to come in. I'll just give it another couple of seconds, and then we can talk about what the responses look like. I'm interested to see what the responses look like, to see if we're going to get lots of entrepreneurs setting up entities now. So we can see that actually a pretty even spread. I'm not sure if everybody on the call can see the poll results there, but it looks like a pretty even spread, which I'm surprised around in one side of things, and not too surprised in the other, because it seems to be like there's lots of different challenges. And I think, Malak, you touched on this in terms of there needs to be a multi-pronged approach to getting women into entrepreneurship and into broader opportunities that would hopefully tick off all of these boxes. And I think this probably supports what we've already been talking around in terms of the challenges. Coming to you, Dr. Salma, on the results here, and you talked about your background being perhaps quite a modest background. Were there any of these issues or any of these topics that would have particularly caused you problems in terms of starting up your business and pursuing green Watech and going through that process? I'm not sure if we've lost Dr. Salma there. Perhaps, Dr. Enass, do you have any views on this in terms of which of those maybe caused bigger problems? I know we touched upon some of them earlier, but it would be interesting to get your view on the responses there, and if you have any particular examples.
Sorry, you were cutting off a little bit. Do you want me, just to make sure I understood your question, because I didn't hear half of it. Do you want me to comment on the list and the percentages? Is that your question, or?
No, so sorry about the tech issues then, and I'm surprised we haven't found more tech issues throughout this, so we should be happy about that. What I'm getting to is, you know, it seems like quite a broad spread, and I just wanted to get your view. I know you touched upon some of the issues earlier, but any particular examples from you in terms of stumbling blocks from those responses? So did you find that it was hard to get to information or hard to get funding, for example, right at the beginning?
If funding is was an issue, I wouldn't say there wasn't access to opportunities. I think it's very important to know, like, you know, when you know something or a lot about a topic. In my case, it was like I had some expertise in a topic that I knew a lot about it, and I had like technical credibility to talk or work around the topic. So access to opportunities wasn't limiting. Access to funding didn't really match the level that we needed to work at to evolve and develop fast. But the way to do it is that you just do it slower, and you keep trying until you gain some momentum to be able to raise more. And there are some sources of funding out there. Sometimes you don't find it in one country, and you can reach out to another country, and some people will see the credibility in your idea and fund it. And that did happen with us. So a lack of funding is an issue that every entrepreneur face, or most of the entrepreneurs have. Add to that, like, you know, the age and the woman factors, and it just becomes harder and harder. And as you look for more and more funding, that also scales. This issue particularly also scale for a few reasons. First, funders like to fund founders that are like them. If the majority of funders are male, then, you know, the trust in a woman being able to lead a particular type of business, especially when it comes to STEM, where it's more difficult, less straightforward, years of development, a lot of market testing, it makes it harder. And that is definitely a common problem that every woman entrepreneur face. And I really hope that, you know, a solution is on its way, because there is some signs of change. At least we know that there is a problem, and we're talking about it and we're trying to fix it. But it's definitely a challenge, a big one.
Okay, thank you for that. I guess we can kind of move on, and I think we've got a lot of insightful information there. I want to move on just to one or two questions from the audience. The first to Dr. Afef, just a very, very quick one. So we've been asked, how can your program, or how can the World Bank's programs be scaled? Do you think it is possible to scale those programs? And I'm conscious we've only got a couple of minutes, so a brief response would be great. How do we scale those programs to work on a bigger platform?
Thank you. Very, very important question. I think it is scalable. We can scale it up. First of all, through the existing startups of Empower Her. They are already doing a great job at being invited in universities to inspire and talk to other potentially graduate students about their journey. And let's not forget that for Empower Her, we went to those interior regions where women don't have access to any information. So we didn't go to those who have access to networks, those who have already access to finance or know where to go. So we went to those who were unemployed and did not have any means to find any information. So the first thing is to use these as role models. And I think one of the speakers talked about role models. Malak, I think, insisted on that. So use these role models with their contagious motivation and incentive and empowerment to empower others, and then work around the ecosystem. So as I'm leaving this meeting, I'm going to another meeting to launch the Maghreb Gender Facility for Women and Girls, where we're going to work on providing the data and the evidence to the countries on success stories, but also on the cost of inaction if we don't have 50% of the population participate in the economy. Women are form 50% of the population. And I saw also another question about where to start from. I think you start from looking at the ecosystem. If you don't have that information, seek that information, and don't be shy to look for ideas, and look for trusted persons in the private sector, in the academia, in the public sector, to share your idea, and then to seek information on how to navigate the ecosystem of startups. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Afef. And I know you have to run off now to your other session. So thank you very much for your input. It's been really insightful to speak to you.
Thank you for having me.
I think we'll do one more question. I'm very conscious of time, and that anything further now is kind of running over. So one more question to Dr. Salma, if you don't mind. One of the questions was, treating used water to be used in agriculture needs to meet certain standards. Did you find government support to meet those requirements? And how did you meet the costs of the units?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Actually, through our system, which is a patented system, we can meet the requirements for water reuse. So in Morocco, we do have some low specification of the quality of this water that we meet, and it is monitored by some public laboratories. So actually, the second part, if we receive any help from the governments concerning this issue, I think that's the government is encouraging enterprise to treat and reuse water. We do have a new law concerning this part. And for the price of the unit, it is very hard to answer this question because it's depending of the quality and the quantity of water, but it's starting from $10,000 till $400K.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And I think, as I mentioned, we're low on time. I would just like to finish though by saying, by asking you all, sorry, just in one or two words, what information or what advice can you give to our audience today on how they can apply their entrepreneurial skills? So if they go off now and want to start something, very, very briefly, what would you tell them to do or not to do, I guess? Malak, can we start with you on this one?
Yeah, I'll put it very simple. I think know the industry that you want to go in very, very well, and basically find a problem that you can solve for your community, and then the business model that supports you and makes you money. I can't emphasize more these three things, especially knowing the industry and having that knowledge that you're trying to pursue is really, really crucial for you to be able to find the right problem to solve and create and make that into an opportunity.
Thank you, Malak. Dr. Salma, do you have a few words on that?
Yeah, in addition to what Dr. Malak has said, I will say that overcoming self-limiting beliefs and self-imposed limitation is often the biggest obstacle standing between you and me and women in general and the realization of our full potential.
Thank you. And finally, Dr. Enass, your view on that?
I would say, in addition to distinguishing yourself by knowing something that gives you real credibility, add to that, acknowledge that you don't know everything and you're just starting. And in addition to the importance of funding, it's good to reach out for advice to others who have more experience than you. You'd find that very, very valuable at the beginning, and it would help you set up, and avoid making mistakes that are avoidable with advice.
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree more. Thank you all for your views on that. And on that note, obviously, time as it is running a little bit over, we will conclude this edition of the Wiser Wisdom series held in partnership with the Arab International Women's Forum. I hope everyone on the call found the topics engaging and enlightening, and I certainly did. We'll be sending a survey shortly to everyone on the call, and we'd appreciate if you would complete it if you have a couple of minutes. Thank you to the panel. You've been absolutely fantastic, and it's been super interesting hearing from you. And thank you for sharing all of your insights. Thank you also to everyone commenting with questions in the audience. So with that, we can sign off, and we look forward to seeing everyone again at future sessions. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.